Welcome to the first module of the training course on co-creation practices developed at the University of Groningen. The insights presented here build on earlier research work of our team, as well as on the co-creation activities conducted within the HumAIne project. In this first module session, we'll see why it's important to prepare co-creation carefully, rather than treating it as an improvised activity. You'll also learn why structure and preparation make co-creation more inclusive, more productive, and better at aligning stakeholders. We'll go through the key steps: defining goals and inputs, choosing the right participants, deciding on formats and tools, and shaping the session flow. And finally, we'll look at best practices that highlight what works well in real projects. By the end of this module, you will have achieved the following learning goals. First, after this training, you will understand why it's important to clearly define goals, inputs, and guiding questions when planning a co-creation session. Second, you will recognize the value of selecting a suitable format, tools, and methods to make participation inclusive and effective. And third, you will see how best practices help structure the session flow, ensure shared understanding, and keep diverse stakeholders aligned. Let's get started. Co-creation is about bringing people into the process, not just at the end, but right from the start. Instead of treating users and stakeholders as passive recipients, it makes them active participants in shaping outcomes. This hasn't always been the case. In the early days, user involvement was mostly about gathering requirements. Think of focus groups or usability testing. Those methods helped, but they also had their limits. Sometimes people resisted change, or too much weight was given to user opinions without checking against other needs. Participatory design was the next step. Here, users became collaborators. They worked alongside designers and developers, and their input gave services and results a stronger foundation. Today, co-creation brings all of these experiences together. It connects people with diverse perspectives, helps align such stakeholders, and creates space for brainstorming and coordination. It is especially suitable to support human-centric and adaptive AI projects. Co-creation helps us see how people interact with systems, which is especially beneficial in AI-enabled processes where roles are shifting and adapting. And because it's iterative, it makes it possible to adapt along the way, balancing the needs of the technology with the values of the users and many other stakeholders involved in the complex process, from design to adoption of AI-enabled processes. Now, why does this matter in practice? And what benefits does co-creation actually bring? First, it drives innovation. Involving users and a diverse set of stakeholders generates ideas that organizations might not come up with on their own. It sparks more original thinking and builds organizational innovativeness. Second, it improves project outcomes. Early input from users and other important stakeholders strengthens the quality of requirements and increases the chances of project success. Third, it boosts adoption and satisfaction. When people feel included in the process, they develop trust and loyalty. They are more likely to embrace the solution and remain engaged over time. And finally, co-creation enhances inclusivity. By involving diverse groups, participatory approaches help reduce inequities and make solutions more relevant for a wide range of users. Now that we've seen what co-creation is and why it matters, the next question is, how do we actually plan and structure it? Co-creation doesn't just happen on its own. It requires careful preparation, the right setup, and a clear process to make sure that all participants can contribute meaningfully. In the next part of this module, we'll look at how to design co-creation activities, how to engage stakeholders, and how to create the right conditions for collaboration. Even though the focus of each co-creation phase or session may differ, where one might be about defining needs and another one about testing solutions, the structure should always return to the same core principles. A practical way to keep those principles in mind is by using guiding questions. These questions will help ensure that, no matter the phase or focus, your co-creation efforts remain purposeful and well-structured. The first and most important guiding question is, what is the goal of the co-creation session? And what is the related output? Without clarity here, everything else becomes much harder to manage. Then, there are two criteria to consider. First, is it realistic to achieve the output during the session itself, or will it need some post-processing and refinement afterward? And second, how detailed does the output need to be at this stage? To make this more concrete, let's look at an example of how co-creation can be planned within a project timeline. Let's look at an example from the HumAIne project itself. The overall HumAIne project lasted 36 months, and co-creation activities were integrated throughout a large part of it, specifically from month 3 to month 24. These sessions were closely aligned with the development of the AI components. To structure the process, the project was divided into 3 co-creation phases. Phase 1 was definition and design. Here, the co-creation focus was on developing user stories and mapping out the processes, including the changes that were expected. This phase lasted 9 months. Phase 2 was early development and testing. In this stage, results from Phase 1 were revised during co-creation, and risks and KPIs were developed to guide progress. This phase took 6 months. Finally, Phase 3 was final development and testing. The focus shifted to refining the outputs from Phase 2 and carrying out external validation. This also lasted 6 months. This example shows how co-creation can be embedded across different stages of a project with different goals, not as a one-off event, but as a structured and ongoing process that evolves alongside the development of the AI-enabled system. So regardless of when sessions take place, each one needs focus. That starts with clarifying the goal and output, and then asking another key guiding question. What do we already know about the topic at hand? Before any co-creation session, you should check, what do we already know, and what's missing? That missing information is crucial. It's the input that keeps discussions focused and productive. So, gather what you need in advance, whether that's research, examples, or draft ideas. These so-called co-creation seeds give the team something concrete to build on. Let's now quickly dive into how seeding shapes the session. Seeds can take many different forms and come from a variety of sources. Sometimes they're already there, hidden in project materials, descriptions, or early documentation. Other times, they need to be prepared through meeting notes, interviews, or preparatory surveys. These seeds not only provide valuable input, but can also help align stakeholders before the session even begins or spark ideas. For instance, if a session is focused on defining user stories, it's important to have some related input ready in advance, whether that's material prepared by user story owners or a suitable template to guide the process. But collecting seeds is only the first step. Once you have them, it's important to evaluate which tools will work best with these seeds. How should the session be structured around them? How much time will it take to work through them? And of course, which stakeholders need to be in the room? All things we will discuss in the next slides. In short, seeds aren't just background material. They're the building blocks that shape the flow and success of the co-creation session. But what happens if those seeds aren't available? When seeds are unavailable, they need to be generated through preparatory activities. For example, by conducting interviews or surveys. These activities do more than just provide missing input. They can also be used to align stakeholders with the goals of the co-creation session. That way, participants come in with a shared understanding and are better prepared to contribute. So once the seeds are in place, there are still a few more steps needed to get ready for the session. One crucial question to ask oneself when organizing co-creation activities is, who should actually be in the room to meet the goal of the co-creation? The right mix of people makes all the difference. You should also ask yourself, what's their average level of familiarity with the topic? And do they need any preparatory training materials to participate effectively? Getting this balance right helps to ensure that everyone can contribute meaningfully. On the next slide, we'll break this down further, looking at the different categories of stakeholders, their roles, and the contributions you can expect from each of them. Stakeholder inclusion is about making sure the right groups are represented in the co-creation session. Each group contributes something different, and together they cover the full range of perspectives needed. For example, Domain experts provide subject matter input, ensuring that the AI solution addresses real-world needs. End users or beneficiaries bring practical experience and validate usability and relevance. AI developers and data scientists translate requirements into technical implementation. Project managers or coordinators align activities, manage timelines, and make sure co-creation is integrated. Ethics and compliance experts safeguard fairness, transparency, and regulatory alignment. UX and service designers shape interfaces and interactions for accessibility and user experience. Data owners or IT teams ensure secure access to data and technical feasibility. Decision makers and sponsors provide strategic direction and resources. And finally, policy or legal advisors address data privacy, legal, and policy implications. Once the right stakeholders are included, the next question that needs answering is, how will the co-creation session be carried out? This means thinking about the format. Will it be an in-person session, a virtual one, or a hybrid of both? Each setup has its strengths and challenges, so the choice should fit the project, the goal, and the people involved. It also means deciding on duration. How long should the session last to allow for real engagement, while keeping participants focused and energized? By being clear about format and timing, you ensure that the co-creation session is both practical and effective. Let's take a closer look at the different formats and when each is most suitable. Virtual synchronous sessions happen in real time, great for brainstorming, getting immediate feedback, making joint decisions, or running guided workshops. Virtual asynchronous sessions let people contribute at different times. They're useful across time zones, for reflective reviews, long-term collaboration, or pre- and post-workshop tasks. In-person sessions are especially valuable for team alignment and creative ideation. They allow for hands-on activities like clustering, post-its, or journey mapping, and they're best for discussions that require trust or sensitivity. And finally, hybrid sessions bring it all together. They connect distributed and core teams, support inclusive decision-making, and make it easy to showcase work across locations, balancing live interaction with digital documentation. The key is to choose the format that best matches your goals and the interaction you want to create. And of course, whichever format you pick, the supporting tools you choose will make or break the session. So let's take a closer look at those next. The tools you choose should always align with the planned structure and the objectives of the session. For in-person sessions, simple tools like flipcharts, post-its, and paper often work well. But even in these settings, digital tools may be the better choice for activities that involve zooming in, editing, or collaborative viewing, for example, when working on process workflows. For virtual or hybrid formats, digital collaboration platforms are essential. Tools that allow simultaneous editing and give the facilitator control help keep the session organized and interactive. Two examples include Miro boards, which were used in the HumAIne sessions to support structured collaboration, and Draw.io, which is well suited for collaborative process design. By selecting tools that fit both the objectives and the format, you create the conditions for participants to engage effectively. So once you've chosen the right format, timing, and tools, the next big question is, how will the session itself actually be structured and facilitated? That's what truly shapes the flow and experience for participants, and it's where we'll turn our focus next. First things first, preparation. A co-creation session is only as good as the groundwork you lay. Start by defining your framework. What's the goal? Who should attend? How much time do you really need, and structure the activities accordingly and send invitations. If needed, organize seeding materials. Then think about the format. Is it in-person, hybrid, or fully virtual? That choice affects everything, from the tools you'll use to how you manage energy in the group. Next, prepare the environment. If it's in person, that means setting up the room, arranging materials, and making sure the space feels inviting. If it's online, test your digital tools ahead of time and keep things simple for participants. And finally, allow time for tool familiarization. Don't assume everyone knows how to use Miro or Zoom polls. A quick warm-up or short tutorial at the start can save you a lot of frustration later. Once the session begins, your role shifts from planner to guide. starting with a focus on exploring ideas. Kick things off with a short warm-up or icebreaker. This helps people relax and connect. Then open the space for idea generation. At this stage, quantity is your friend. Encourage everyone to put ideas on the table without worrying if they're perfect. Remember to timebox activities. A bit of pressure keeps the energy alive and prevents endless discussion. In the next phase of the workshop, you need to create focus. Group, highlight, and cluster similar ideas. This helps people see patterns and connections. Then, guide the group to refine and combine those ideas or inputs, turning raw thoughts into stronger concepts. When it comes to choosing, use simple methods like dot voting or an impact versus effort matrix. These make decision-making transparent and inclusive. And as facilitator, you're also the energy manager. Build in small breaks, vary the tasks, and, if needed, rotate roles to prevent fatigue. So, to sum it up, great co-creation sessions are built on two things: solid preparation and attentive facilitation. In this example from the early co-creation work in the HumAIne project, the session started with a short introduction by a main pilot partner, setting out objectives of the use case, the key decisions, and initial user stories. The group then refined those user stories, before moving into a longer discussion on the technical components needed. Next came a focused exchange on human-AI teaming, followed by a discussion of KPIs and success factors. Finally, the session closed with a brief debrief to capture insights and next steps. This agenda shows how co-creation sessions can balance perspectives, stay focused, and cover all key topics within a clear time frame. This agenda was repeated for the different pilot partners involved, allowing sufficient time for each pilot. Of course, such an effective session is only possible if all partners are aware of the goal and activities of the workshop and the input required from them. So, after seeing how an agenda works in practice, let's wrap up by breaking it down into 6 concrete steps you can follow to organize and structure a co-creation session. Step 1 is goal and output. Think of this as setting the destination. What's the purpose of this session, also in relation to the goals of project phases, and what do we want to have in hand when it's over? Step 2 is knowledge and seeds. Here we ask, what do we already know, and what input do we need? Seeds can come from project docs, meeting notes, or even interviews. If they're missing, we create them. Step 3 is participants. Who should be in the room? We need the right mix of expertise and perspectives. And sometimes participants need prep work or background material before they join. Step 4 is format and tools. This is about the setup. Will we meet online, in person, or in a hybrid way? And how long should the session last to keep people focused but still cover the ground we need? And then, which tools do we need? Step 5 is structure and timing. Here we map out the workflow. Each task gets a time slot, with breaks or switches built in to keep energy levels up. The structure guides us, but we also leave some flexibility. And step 6 is the agenda. This is where it all comes together. We lay out the sequence of activities, assign roles, and plan a short debrief at the end so nothing gets lost. Taken together, these 6 steps make sure a co-creation session has direction, is well prepared, and gives space for both structure and creativity. These concrete steps will support you in creating engaging sessions and optimally prepare you to facilitate a successful workshop focused on exploring many ideas and directions, but also on deciding on focus. As we wrap up this first part of the module, it's important to take a moment to pause and reflect. The real value of this training comes when you connect what we've discussed here to your own projects and experiences. To help with that, we've prepared a set of reflective questions. They're not meant to be answered right now, but rather as a guide for you to revisit in your own time. These questions will prompt you to think about what you've learned, how it applies to your work, and what concrete steps you can take moving forward. Take a few notes, be honest with yourself, and see what insights emerge. In the second part of this module, we'll move from planning into practice. We'll focus on best practices, what works well, common pitfalls to avoid, and how to make co-creation sessions as effective and engaging as possible. Our first tip is about ensuring shared understanding early on. A good way to do this is to begin every co-creation session with a short briefing or a quick recap of the topic. Even if participants seem familiar with the project, don't assume they're all at the same level. People come in with different backgrounds and other commitments, so this short step helps align everyone from the start. And here's a bonus to keep in mind. Co-creation isn't only about idea generation. It also works as a coordination tool. When stakeholders are working on interdependent systems or components, starting with a shared understanding makes it much easier to keep those efforts aligned. Our second tip is about supporting tool familiarity across different formats. For in-person sessions, the challenges are different. Here it's about making sure materials are visible and accessible. For example, if you're using flipcharts or whiteboards, make sure everyone can actually see them. Also, limit how many people work on the same board at once. Too much crowding slows things down. And a simple trick that works really well is color coding. Use colors to distinguish between tasks, elements, or contributions. It keeps everything clearer and easier to follow. For virtual sessions, remember that not everyone comes in with the same level of comfort or speed when using digital tools. To make it easier, share a short guide or manual in advance that explains the tool functions and gives an overview of the session structure. And during the session itself, set aside a little time for participants to explore the tool together, so nobody feels left behind. Our third tip is about creating a structured and inclusive session flow. A good co-creation session doesn't just happen. It needs a clear methodology to keep participants focused and engaged. Think of the structure as your roadmap. It makes sure no key activity is skipped and that everyone understands the objectives. To achieve this, plan time carefully. That includes a moment for tool familiarization, a short recap of key concepts, and enough space for each step or activity in the session. It also helps to provide supporting materials in advance, so participants arrive prepared. And don't forget visual structuring tools. Something as simple as color coding can make complex discussions much clearer and easier to follow. The fourth best practice is all about managing time and flow. A good session doesn't just happen, it's tested and fine-tuned. That's why it helps to run a test session beforehand, to spot issues and adjust timing. Always plan some buffer time for activities that may take longer than expected, and prepare backup options, Plan B, C, or even D, so you can stay flexible when things change. Most importantly, keep in mind that it's not about rushing to finish every single activity. What matters most is the quality of the outputs. A shorter, well-developed outcome is always better than a rush checklist. Our final best practice is all about boosting engagement and clarity. Sessions work best when people are actively involved, so use dynamic formats like peer reviews, brainstorming, or other interactive exercises to keep the energy high. At the same time, make sure the content is easy to follow. Use colors and a clear structure to organize ideas visually. This helps participants see connections, stay engaged, and understand the flow of the discussion at a glance. Let's wrap up what we've covered in this module. At its heart, co-creation is about engaging stakeholders early and continuously, making them active partners rather than passive observers. To make that work, you need clear goals, the right inputs, and guiding questions that frame the process from the start. The format and tools you choose should always match your objectives and the needs of your participants. And structuring sessions is key. It ensures shared understanding, inclusivity, and a natural flow. Finally, best practices make all the difference. Staying flexible, building tool familiarity, and using engagement strategies that keep people energized and focused. Together, these elements create co-creation sessions that are purposeful, collaborative, and impactful. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you'll carry these insights with you until the next module.